shoot, I gotta do the intro probably. Let me just look at this book. Oh shoot, this is my
didn't
book.
you pick it and read
Hello,
it?
hello.
Yeah.
Oh, Ashley,
Well, now
is
I can't even
happening
see how big
here?
my lines are.
Ashley,
There's
we
two
got
Ashleys.
two Ashleys.
Oh.
Sorry,
That was weird.
hate my thing just quit out. I don't know why, but we're here.
But there were two of you at one point.
Oh,
Yeah,
very
there was
weird.
two
It was
Ashleys.
like-
It was like
wow, I actually have a
Super
twin. I
sci-fi.
didn't tell y'all.
Super sci-fi. Maybe you're splitting in two, like the cells.
Oh.
Better be getting double the money then if I'm
yeah,
working
all
double.
right, I like it,
Very
I like it.
HeLa.
Yeah, totally.
So that takes us to the intro. It's my book choice now. And we're reading we read The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks by Rebecca Skloot. I like that last name.
That's a good
Stuff.
last name. I wish I
That is.
knew it and changed my name to it.
So this is
Called
a
Skloot.
nonfiction. This is like a reporter, science writer kind of book, which is really nice. So she's like telling the story, not just of like Henrietta's immortal selves, but of her and her family and medical ethics and all this stuff. I read this book a while back as part of my other book club, and I really enjoyed it. And then when I went to read it again, I was like, wow, there's a lot of words. This is a long book. Like, there's a lot. She took over 10 years researching this book. Like, it is good. And she was trying to tell the true story of Henrietta. If she hadn't done that, like, we wouldn't know all this stuff about Henrietta. And because some of her children, most of her children have passed on by now. I think she's got a surviving son still. So anyway, that was a really long intro. Let's talk about the book.
It was a good contrast to the last book, right? 10 years of research as opposed to 3 months.
Right.
And I feel like you can tell when you're reading it. It's
Definitely.
really, the amount of detail I felt in each sentence or chapter paragraph felt important a lot of the time. So
Yeah, and not
I
repetitive.
didn't feel like it was,
yeah,
and I didn't feel it was boring. Like it went from like lots of scientific information and detail to their family and their story. Like it went back and forth so effortlessly that I wasn't bored. And I only had 10 days to read it because I ended up reading these other books I wanted to read before, and then I had to rush through it. And I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna read 400 pages. This is so thick in 10 days. But the first day I read 100. Like it was really easy to read. It was super enjoyable. I also liked that the author put herself in the book. Then it wasn't just like her reporting about the family. Like she was part of the story. I really like that too.
I read it on the beach, which is funny because you wouldn't think this would be a beach read, but it was definitely like such a interesting read. And I loved that there was so much like she put you in the world of what it would have been like during, Henrietta Lacks's life and what was happening in the world in science, people not trusting necessarily what people were talking about. I thought that was all very, like, you felt like you were in the world, but you were also modern with what she was dealing with the family, plus you were in Henrietta's world. It was like three different kind of paths that you were in all together.
I read the book easily over 5 years ago. Loved the book. Hadn't thought about it too much since. Was not even aware that they made a movie about it until I saw that.
I knew I had something to do. I forgot to
Yeah.
watch the movie. I totally forgot until right now. I was like, oh yeah.
Oh no.
I watched it last night at 10 p.m. because I was like,
Wow.
oh, I forgot to watch the movie.
Grammar.
It was,
Very
you
good.
know what? I love it that it's of a time, like right now, every movie comes out is like 2 hours plus. Like everybody forgot the fucking editing room. Like we don't, I don't know about y'all,
So
but
is
like
this
at
another
this
2 hour
point,
movie?
I can,
No.
no, it's back when they like kept us reasonable, a good 90-minute.
It was 90 minutes.
That's what we have time for. An hour and a half.
Yeah, like I can't
Yeah,
sit
perfect.
more. I'm sorry. It's 2024. We all have ADHD.
Well, I also
Yeah.
think that the limited series is the answer to this, right? Do
Probably.
a bunch of
Lessons in
multiple-
chemistry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
lessons
thought
in
the
chemistry.
book was great and the movie, one of the rare occasions where they did a great job, somehow edited it in a way that still felt the vibe. Oprah killed it. I usually love Rose Byrne. I wouldn't have picked her. It's like, your mental image is different than the casting, But still, I think it was a great movie. I don't know what you guys think, but I thought they really nutshelled it in a way that didn't feel too, they didn't
chopped
cut.
up.
Yep, not too chopped up.
Yeah, but I miss the not that they could do this, but the book gives you so much more of that context and that like scientific kind of background that they couldn't put in the movie. It wouldn't fit. So the story itself is there, but the
opening sequence was a bit cheesy.
Yeah.
The science opening sequence, that's true. That's a good point. But, yeah, because that really is the part of the book Sarah was describing, like the first 100 pages is that real sciencey, the sciencey science. The real sciencey kind.
The science. The other science.
The kind of the other.
She kind of went back and forth from the sciencey science too, to keep you, like if you just do, like I love reading science books, I'll just read that. But most people, if you do too much, they like kind of glaze over and they're like, oh man, this is like being in school. And for some people, that's a bad thing. I'm just going to say, for me,
I thought that's what was going to happen. That's what I thought.
And so they go back and forth with like the family, and like if they went into just the sciencey science stuff, people would be like, tell me more about the relationships. Like people want to get the feelings from the movie.
But doesn't it say so much about the writing that was? I don't know who likes reading science books or not, aside from Mare. She's that one person reading those books. But it's like It wasn't boring. I think it says so much about the author. Like, wow, how'd you do that? Because I didn't really either. Yeah, I thought it was fascinating and sometimes gut wrenchingly. Like, sometimes science stuff makes me feel uncomfortable in my belly area,
especially when it's like unethical.
Yeah,
it was quite uncomfortable.
Yeah,
and like the history of science is riddled with unethicalness, if that's a word.
Yeah. Okay, I want to bring something up. Talking about that, the unethical. So I tried to find it. I don't know if you guys know, but at the end of the book, it says that today, even if you go in for your tonsils or your appendix out, that the hospitals take those things and then take your cells from them and use them. So I've had both. So I was trying to figure out if my cells are in circulation somewhere and some freezer.
Are my cells immortal?
That's a U.S. thing. And I was like, so am I cells somewhere in some freezer somewhere? Because I had both those surgeries.
Wow.
Well,
I don't feel comfortable with that. That's why I never did. You know how you can mail in your DNA? I'm like, I never want my DNA to be out there. Well, forget it. It was already taken when I was a child.
What did you give away? Your tonsils and what else?
Appendix.
My appendix.
Oh, wow.
I donated my breast milk to a study.
And we all know what you're made of.
This breast milk study that it got sent down, and I have breast milk frozen somewhere in California that they are studying.
Yeah, but you chose that. That's
I know
the
I did.
ethical part. I didn't choose
you want me to just
as a
put
child.
it in the mail? Like, isn't it going to be gross when it gets there? I don't want that job. I feel bad.
Sour.
So I have something in my once again research that I did. That in August 2023, Henrietta Lacks's living relatives reached a settlement with a multi-billion-dollar biotech company that they sued, seeking compensation for using the regenerative cells that were taken against her consent. But it was a undisclosed settlement, so we don't know. But it's a Massachusetts-based Thermo Fisher Scientific. But it they were saying in the article that this, because it was a settlement, it doesn't set precedent, but it could be something that people are suing for more. So maybe you still can. But this is the States, of course, still, but
Sarah,
that maybe
there's still time.
Yeah, it's in a process of being. So at least the family got some money, which is awesome, just recently,
and but recognition a little bit, right? That the company recognized, like, okay, if we don't settle, this is going to cause a thing, and they don't want it to set a precedent to the company. So of course they know it's sticky, because like ethics comes before laws usually, right? People start talking about like what's the ethical thing, and laws are born of the discussions around ethical discussions. Like that's usually comes first, is the thought, and then eventually something is like, well, we're gonna have to make a law because nobody's just gonna do it or whatever. So it's interesting. It could be the beginning of new laws.
Also, Lindsay, with the author Rebecca Skloot, How do you say her name again?
Skloot.
Skloot. And she said it was like an update interview with the BBC, and she was saying that the family now are on some sort of board to give authorization for using HeLa.
Great.
Ooh, that's
So-
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought that's amazing. So
That is good.
they've come a long way since the end of this book.
So these
movie.
immortal cells, they were like her cancer, right?
Cancer,
Like they
yeah.
were cancer cells.
Mhm.
But other cancer cells prior to these ones died?
Died.
Yes, so cells usually divide a certain number of times and then they'll die.
Be done.
Like they have a limited number of replications, but hers are different, and hers are even like, I don't know if you remember this part, but like hers are even better at dividing. Like they can travel in a lab, like on like a piece of dust, and end up in another petri dish and take over because they're so good. Like what I find also interesting is like they're her cancer cells, and so like modern medicine is kind of a lot based on these specific cells. And so we've made vaccines and all this other stuff, but these cells are not like every other cell,
Any other cell. Yeah.
right? Because
And
they
the fact
are
that they're cancer cells, the fact that they're like it's just the juxtaposition of cancer to how much life they have given is so confusing and incredible.
right. It's hard to hold the feeling.
Yeah.
Like, how do I feel about it? Because
Mhm.
I mean, there's something there where you're like, it kind of seems strange that we base so much of our medicine and science on this, and yet it seems to work. You know?
Is there ever, I don't know, like again, this would be a research question, but have they found other people's cancer cells that have the ability to divide and, I guess, divide and travel as well as hers? Or was it just like, this little baby works and it let's just go with it? Like, what, like, do we know why? I don't know. I don't understand. It's very confusing.
Didn't they say in the book that they found other ones that did, but then they're thinking now they're cross-contaminated?
That's
with
what I was going to
HeLa,
say.
so-
Nobody can confirm
like,
that
these are
HeLa's not
magic
involved.
cells.
Yeah, so they thought they did, and then they realized, no, they're contaminated with HeLa, and once again, that cell that we thought was something else is just HeLa, right?
more
Is that right,
HeLa.
Mary?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, they did say that. Yeah.
Crazy.
Dang.
And they
They're
did
the zombie cell. Zombies.
They did. They brought her kids in at some point because they're like, we're going to check to make sure you don't have this cancer that your mom had.
Yeah.
But instead, they were taking their DNA because they were trying to figure out what the difference was too. They were trying to figure out if they had it as well, and why. Right? Like, it's just like, just the lies, or you know,
Misinformation.
And in the movie that she interviews that made me so much. She interviews that doctor and says like, well, were they told that they were going to use their cells or whatever and or their blood DNA? And the doctor said something to the effect of, well, those people wouldn't understand anyways.
It's so insulting.
I was so
it's just so insulting.
Yeah. I was so mad. But you think that was probably the thought process of all those doctors who did medical tests on, people of color in the States, probably in Canada too, over and over, because they thought they were lesser than or didn't understand, or I don't know, just
it was like
disgusting.
situations like these where where people started talking about like informed consent, because they'd be like, well, they won't understand, so we're not going to tell them, so we're not like, they don't need to give consent. But these days, for us, that's shocking.
Mhm.
That would be an option. Be like, I don't believe they would understand, so I'm not going to say anything, and that's okay because I'm smart and they're not, and I'm the doctor, or
The
whatever.
thing that bothers me is that like they necessarily view even Indigenous people too, right? Because of Indian hospitals and everything, and Black people and whoever else were like taken advantage of in these ways because they're less than, and so we're using them for experiments and whatever. So they have that view of their incapacities or whatever, yet their bodies are apparently good enough to do the research on to then carry over and apply to us, right? Like if they're not good enough, then they shouldn't also be good enough to use to base our like science and experiments on, right? So they're not good enough to tell, and they're too dumb to know. So we shouldn't even talk to them. But their bodies are perfectly fine and equal to ours because we can use those to find out whatever. You know what I mean? Like that contrast really bothers me because I feel like it reveals that you know that they're the same. You know what I mean? They are just as smart or just as worthy or whatever for science, right? But just so also you can move your purpose along, it's necessary to view them as less than.
I also like that one researcher that had been using the cells forever at Hopkins, Christoph or something like that, and that how he invited Deborah and her brother to see the cells, and he gave the picture where it's lit up by
And
and
it was done
he,
beautifully in the movie too.
yeah, and he explained everything to them that they asked, so they understood why her cells are so important, what they do with them, what they look like, what it's all about. People can understand if you just explain. They didn't go
it's not
to
about
medical
race,
for
right?
8
It's about
years.
education and yeah.
Right. You studied this for 8 years. So yeah, you know more about it. But if you just took the time to explain a little bit, I'm sure they could understand. And that made me really mad.
Well, that's the thing too, is that like
part
if
was
they
so
do
lovely.
understand, they're probably going to say no. So
Yeah.
better not tell them and pretend like they
Maybe,
couldn't
but maybe
understand
not.
anywhere.
I mean, also like the greed of the whole thing. It's like if you just
Always.
gave the family like, let's just say 0.1 cents for every transaction, right? Like, I mean, you don't have to, I'm not saying that's how much you should get, but you don't have to give back very much for it to be significant. And if you really, like,
And fair.
they can be very,
Acknowledgement.
The story of the cells is amazing anyway, and they might decide, yeah, we want to help everybody, but like, why can't we all just share a piece of the pie? If you are like, well, we're growing them and paying for the nutrients, like, sure, but just acknowledge, like,
Where they
this
came
family's
from.
has their own medical expenses and challenges, and like, it's just criminal that they can't get the care that they need when their mother's cells or their grandmother's cells is going around, helping make the polio vaccine.
Literally informing
Like,
the care of everybody else ever.
Yeah.
In the entire world.
And I think the original doctor that made the discovery, the name is not in my mind. He was giving them away for free. I mean, though they were taken without consent and multiplied without consent and passed out without consent. I thought he originally wasn't the pharmaceutical capitalist monster. I think that no. I think he really believed that this is a miracle and that he was just mailing them out all over the place.
It was kind of more like a medical culture at the time, where it's like you don't need to tell them. Like he wasn't the only one. He wasn't like this evil guy sitting around plotting something that lots of other people weren't doing. It was like the whole system was
you didn't
a big problem.
really think probably about it in those terms, unfortunately.
Same thing in psychology, right? They're just running experiments on people, and then people are freaking out after, and they're like, oh, that really seemed to have a long-lasting impact on them. Again, some questions start to arise, like, maybe we should tell them that they're part of an experiment before we experiment on them.
Boy, that stuff with her daughter in the hospital was hard to read, wasn't it?
Her sister?
That was really hard to read, yeah. They just did a thin slice in the movie. Oh, but the book, it was excruciating. I remember having to put the book down so many times. It was so hard to
really
read.
hard. The experiments they did on the children that are in that.
It's so amazing that of all the stuff that was lost, that the picture, they found an actual picture of her. Seemed like so magic. Yeah. But
no wonder Deborah was so upset. Like, I couldn't even imagine that you finally find your sister from this, I can't remember what they called it. They called it insane asylum or something.
Yeah.
And
sanitarium, I think.
Yeah, and that they told her that they did experiments on her because of her epilepsy.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't, and seeing her being beaten up when she was such a beautiful child, that was really hard.
Oh, but so Oprah, P.S., nailed, I feel like, from an actress standpoint, like her manic episode
She really did.
Yeah,
Yeah,
of like conveying
you
the
forget she's a great
anxiety
actress.
and like the
Yeah, then she's at
all
the
the
gas
things.
station. She's all like manically talking to a woman. It's just like that was a good little set of acting on her.
So this is a spoiler if anyone hasn't read the book. I just finished the book yesterday. Deborah dying was a real blow for me. Like, I
Yeah.
just can't believe that she's been through all of that. And then 9 months before the book comes out, she dies. Like, I can't even, I was bawling my eyes out. And because I watched the movie too last night, I just kept on thinking, like, how happy she would have been that Oprah played her in the
I know.
movie to talk about her mom, that she just wanted somebody to talk about her mom. And the whole movie was just about her mom too, like, and her
Aw.
family. Like, anyway, I had a really hard time this morning too. And in my personal journal, I almost cried.
Aw.
I just keep on thinking, like, she just went through such a journey. She just wanted to know her mom, and no one would give her any information. And then anytime she tried to get information, people would either try to scam her, or her brothers would be like, they're just scamming you, like, give up. And then she finally got all this information, and it was finally going to happen. Or even she was going to talk at that 9/11 thing, and then 9/11 happened at that conference about her mom. I was like, this woman can't get a break. Anyway, it was just, I really liked Deborah in the book. I really enjoyed her. So, Deborah, if you're watching, Oprah played you.
Yeah,
And
we're
watch it
bleeding
from
you.
the other side.
Not as a zombie.
Or as a zombie. Zombies don't usually sit still and watch movies, though.
Well, we don't know that. Have you met
They're
a zombie?
preoccupied.
Yeah.
I've seen a couple, and they're after the brains. That's what they want. Not
That's just
after
when they're hungry,
entertainment.
Yeah, maybe when they're satiated.
Maybe
they
if
could
they're
just, like,
satiated,
popcorn.
that's how they like,
like
to cap off a
brain.
nice meal. Brains.
like it's movie night. I need
Like
some
a-
brains.
Yeah, like they gotta feed the tiger before you're allowed to go in and pet it. They just have to get it full. Get the zombies full.
Oh
It's
my
a
goodness.
very
Okay, I have something.
sharp
that-
angle we took.
So I was
We're
looking.
talking about Deborah's zombie now.
Sorry. That's me. I love zombies. Okay.
Book interrupted.
This interruption is, so me and my kids decided to eat outside dinner on the balcony, and it was the evening. We were kind of having a late movie night kind of thing. And all of a sudden, we see like a trail of stars in the sky, like moving. And it was really odd. And my son was scared. He's like, what is that? Like, maybe UFOs or something scary, or my daughter thought it was like a meteor shower or something. But it was moving slowly, and it was very consistent. So, but I didn't have any idea what it was. So we started looking it up on the internet to see what it was, and it's Starlink. It's that Elon Musk's satellite, Starlink, for the internet. And it's like a train in the sky, and it looks like a whole bunch of stars, basically star trains. But they're satellite dishes, but they're all linked together. So it's really unnerving when you see it. So my interruption is Starlink. And I had no idea what it looked like, but if you're ever looking in the sky and you see a trail of stars moving very slowly across the night sky, they're actually satellite dishes.
Book interrupted.
In the book, the one thing that they didn't really put in the movie that I still keep talking about is that everybody married their cousins. That
yeah.
it's like weirded me out.
Yeah.
That like Henrietta Lax's husband, whatever his name was, that they're like actual first
yeah.
cousins. And like the other one that was a suitor was also a cousin. And like they talk about in the book about how maybe the hearing loss of a lot of the kids and that kind of thing is because, I don't know if inbred's a word, but like that because they were cousins, that, but it's I guess
too closely related genetically.
And I just find that
But
really.
even the other lax, remember the other lax that were white lax people?
white
Remember when
lax?
she interviewed them? They were also cousins.
Is it just
Yeah.
because like they're stuck in the same place, and so eventually you just can't not marry someone you're related to? You know what I mean? Like, What is the,
Those are the people you know.
sociological reasoning behind this
I
phenomenon?
think their ideas about inbreeding were just a little bit lax.
Yeah.
Oh,
lax.
idiot.
You're like, how do I keep a straight face while I'm saying this?
Get that.
Oh man. Well, it wasn't probably, there was nothing wrong. Like nobody ever thought there's anything wrong with that. Like,
Well,
you
it didn't
just
seem like
marry.
there was any major issues, right? Like the big scary words are like, oh, your babies will be deformed and like it, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, and that may have been the cause of their hearing loss, but that's not like outrageously shocking that you're like, oh my God, this is because I've cross-pollinated too closely or
Yeah,
whatever.
it sounds like that
in
small
the-
town was pretty small. Like real
I
small.
remember in Sapiens, like breeding with your kind of close group is not that uncommon in the grand scheme of things, because we're, that's who you're with. Like you're
That's what I'm
living
asking,
in small
right?
groups.
Is it limited
the only
selection?
Yeah,
Look at the
reason
royals.
Well, I mean, people are like, if you
Look at
the
the
reason they say, oh, your
royals.
babies will be deformed, if you have like a genetic, like a polymorphism that is uncommon and recessive, if you have kids with your
Or you could end up with a
something you're related
dominant.
to, you
Yeah,
could
yeah.
end up with that. But like, I don't think it's that uncommon in the grand scheme of like human beings to have babies with somebody that you're not even that far removed from, family wise.
In Victorian novels, they talk about it all the time. Like in Jane Austen,
Yeah.
there was marrying your cousin. Like totally normal.
all the
Well, I
time.
think that there's probably an argument along the way somewhere too, where it's like we want to keep it in the family. Like we don't want to share our genes. We need to continue to really be pure Joneses or whatever, right?
Oh,
Like
interesting. I always thought
I
it
could
was
see
everybody
like
gets
more of a
along and you
financial
know
choice,
each
but
other,
yeah.
and like you accept those people already are in your family, so you get along. I don't know.
Okay, so
You know.
what if tomorrow you found out that your husband is your cousin? What would you do?
I would do nothing. I already have a
We
child
would
who's
probably
not.
laugh about it.
Yeah. Oh, that explains so much. That's why we keep looking more alike.
Yeah. Oh, it's just
We've
'cause we dress
already
the
been role playing this.
How did you know our fantasy?
How did you know about our role playing?
Okay, you're my cousin.
Like, yeah, you're my cousin. I don't even know like how you'd like when I think of role playing. I always like.
I know
there's an
exactly. How do you
of course,
show
for
that I'm
me,
your cousin?
there's always an
My
outfit
uncle
element.
is your
Usually
brother.
mesh.
And like, how do you bring that up?
Like a cousin.
Like,
Totally.
my kink is, can you pretend you're my cousin?
God.
Can you call me cuz?
Yeah, that's even like that's a harder thing. What if you're married to someone you're deep into the marriage and they finally come to you with a
Their
role
kink?
play? They want to do this in role play. That's the real question.
I'm sure there's people that
Harder.
they're into that. There's
I'm sure.
people that are into everything. So
Hot. Well, I guess it's anything that's naughty is hot, right?
Yeah,
Anything
that's,
you're not
like I
supposed
was
to
like,
Yeah,
what's the
do.
kink with that? But it's like it's forbidden, so that's
It's
why.
forbidden. Yeah.
Yeah, what were you
God.
shamed for as a child?
Yeah.
all right,
That's
sorry,
great.
that went off topic.
I took it and I went to a worse place. Call it, would you throw in the towel?
Me?
Yeah.
I would just, I don't know. You'd really have to get your wrap
Well,
your
would you
head
be mad at
around
your
it.
family? Like, why didn't you tell me? Like,
Yeah,
you know,
I don't-
someone's got to know.
I wouldn't, if I found out and nobody else knew and I wanted to say, I wouldn't tell anybody. That's
You
for
wouldn't tell
sure.
anyone? Yeah.
No, it would be like a
Guess
secret.
what?
Like I wouldn't even tell my partner. I'd be like, nobody needs to know this information.
Oh, I
Let's
couldn't
just,
carry
like,
it on my
take this
own.
one
I
to the
need
grave.
to tell. You
I
Yeah.
think
need
it
to
would
tell
need to go
them.
on the Christmas card.
Yeah.
Guess who's related?
Just your family tree. You just put your
Yeah,
family tree.
family tree.
With a
then you're
circle,
at the
like
bottom.
an arrow drawing back and forth to each other.
God.
What if your cousin was an adopted cousin? Would you marry that person?
That would be the best loophole, right? Like it's the same
Yeah.
thing as if like your mom gets a stepdad, like gets a new husband, and then you like their kids, who's technically now your brother, right? That's
I've
the best
actually had
loopholes. Like, we're
this
not really
conversation
related.
with my child because Max was her best friend is her cousin Alex, and she, like, this is at 5 years old, she's in love with Alex. It's not like this is friendship, this is love. Like, can Alex and I get married? I love her. Can I be married to Alex? Alex is a female and Max is a female, and I was like, I can't tell you why you can't. I was like, because you're cousins and it's gross. Why is it gross? Well, because if you can't have babies, so
Never
go
mind. Go
nuts.
for it.
Go for it. Yeah, double down.
So that's a good curveball. So lesbian cousins,
There you go.
no problem. Like, if there's no
it.
procreation naturally on the
Yeah.
table, then what are the
Yeah,
rules?
it's. I think it's a procreation problem. So, is it okay to marry your cousin if you're making the choice to not procreate or cannot procreate?
Yes.
But it's not as hot.
Doesn't this come back to the book Sapiens? Doesn't this all come back to Sapiens, where they're talking about religion and how, like, people used to be more like your family would decide who you marry and would be appropriate for both families and what's best for the family, not necessarily like, you know. And then the church came in, right? We talked about this in Sapiens back in season 1. Right? That was season
Leah's
1?
book.
Yes.
It was season
And
1.
yeah, they were talking about how the church kind of made it more taboo to be marrying people who are closely related to you, and it gave them more power, as like, rather than like the family being in more control of who you married, it was more about the church had a say now of who you could and could not marry, and it gave them power.
So do you think that these rules of, let's say the last 100 years has become very taboo? I'm just giving it 100 years. Do you think that's a direct effect of the church stepping in, which they did for the reasons of more control?
Yeah, possibly, because it's not just like, if you went to different places in the world, you'd find probably different opinions about this.
Well, and more genetic research, I'm assuming, that we know that, you know, that breeding with somebody or having a child with somebody that's closely related to you can cause genetic problems.
Right. So could you get like a genetic test and be like, is there going to be anything dangerous that comes from this?
Can I add anything to my
Is that if someone
Kyle?
tunes into this episode and they haven't like listened to us go off topic before, they're just gonna think these bitches are so horny for their cousins. And I really hope that nobody's cousins any of our cousins are listening to this, because it's coming off real creepy. Real.
Or someone's
sus.
cousin's like, finally, I've been thinking about this too.
Finally, I knew it. All of a sudden, we just get phone calls from our cousins.
How's it going?
This episode's getting cringier and cringier. Like, I haven't talked to you since Christmas. Oh boy.
I heard your podcast.
Oh boy.
Hug.
Yeah.
Change topic now.
Yeah.
Sorry,
curveball
cousins.
topic. I was
Sorry.
not expecting that one.
No,
This is
not. This
one
is
of
not
our
how I started the
discussion
day. Yeah. Louis, see Lindsay's notes and all of highlighted
I
those
did.
notes.
I
Can I
did.
marry my cousin? Question mark.
Let's see if we can find a quiz.
Yeah, a cousin fucker quiz.
Who's gonna make a quiz about that? I mean,
I'm
other than
gonna check
Lindsay.
right now. Probably Cosmo.
I just
Poor
couldn't stop
Lindsay,
thinking about
I'm
the cousin
sorry.
thing, and they did it in the movie. That's what I wanted to see.
Yeah.
It's not that I wanted to see it.
No,
I
I know.
feel
It's a
like-
good. It is a good question. It's a good like ethics question, and it's a
Here you
good.
go.
It's got it all.
This
But I think the
Real
reason they
mind
don't
bender.
put it in the
Talking
movie
about-
is because like it detracts from what the
Yes.
message was. Because then
It
it
really
ends up
does.
like this.
Like,
us.
that's
Yeah,
what you
this
talk
is
about.
where
it.
about
Because you can't
Is
think
it okay
about
to marry
anything
your cousin?
else. Yeah. You're just
What
like,
if
After
you
a
are
quick
the same
Google
gender
search,
sex?
this is what
Is it
the
okay?
internet says.
Okay.
Often, cousin marriage is quite safe. It might even be a pretty good idea. But in certain populations or specific families, there might be more risks. Dr. Chung says that's because of a category of genetic conditions. So it does literally all come down to genetics. There's also a TED Talk podcast episode called Is It Really That Bad to Marry My Cousin?
Really
Wow.
scraping
Here
the
we
bottom of
go.
the barrel and TED Talks at this point.
Done.
So desperate to talk. Like, please.
Anyway, so there's all sorts of stuff on the internet about marrying your cousin that seems to be, at first glance, quite pro.
All right.
Right.
Or
Well,
like probably just
go
not
ahead,
as bad
marry
as
your
people let
cousin.
The
on,
future starts
right?
today.
Popular
everybody.
science article. It's not that
Wow.
bad for your future kids. That's literally what this article says.
All right.
And I think they were talking about with the deafness. I was reading something this morning, and I think it was more related to maybe an STD when she gave birth to her kids. That it was went untreated,
Oh, that's possible.
not the
Syphilis.
genetics thing.
Right?
Yeah.
Because
Oh.
often, yeah,
Yeah,
because,
they
like,
handled that in the book a lot more.
Was it syphilis?
maybe.
Because syphilis is
like
the
it
one
was.
that does things like that, I think. It can
I
also
think
make
it
you
was
go
syphilis.
blind.
But yeah, and it was also talking. It was also saying, like, if you look at the medical records, it would say like found this condition, recommend this, and all those things were not done because they would recognize that something had to be done, but they wouldn't treat because she's black. They were just like, oh, here's some stuff, and we could cure. So like there was deafness for something that could be treated that wasn't treated.
Yeah. I don't like all the pain that she was in and going through. And how crazy were the treatments?
The
We're
treatments
just going to
were
put like a
insane.
rod of radioactive into your vagina or whatever, like insane,
sew it
in
in?
there just in case your body's able to get it out because your body knows that it's not supposed to be there.
Like,
And then
what?
it burned her from the inside out, like she was
Insane.
like scorched on the
Insane.
outside,
Like, that's-
even.
Like that level of
Ugh.
torture in just like what was medical treatment, like is just so crazy.
But
Thank
my
goodness
mom
for
said,
HeLa
mom-
cells to help get us, like, and it's so ironic because those cells made medicine better.
Yeah.
Ironically.
Yeah.
my grandfather had prostate cancer. My mom said that that's what they used to do. They would put the seeds of radium just inside. And that
Where it
wasn't that
was.
long ago. I was 15 when he died. So that would have been,
Lord.
just a couple
Sounds
years ago.
crazy.
No.
Yeah. I was like, don't do the math. Please don't
No.
do the math.
But-
12 days ago.
But so I don't know if they still do it, but they did it
They
up
better
until
not.
that many years ago. So
Oh,
You
my
know, the
God.
author I interviewed for the author spotlight, Carrie, the one about taking cancer in the ass or something. No, that's a swear word. Hold on. What is it called? Called
Kicking cancer in the ass is a pretty good title.
Crushing Cancer. A bit different.
Crushing cancer,
Crushing
kicking it in the
cancer.
ass.
Crushing
Oh my God,
Cancer,
I'm
a
like-
patient's complete guide to managing a cancer diagnosis. And his name is Dr. Carrie Forrestal. Anyway, he said that his grandmother or mother or something, I'd have to watch the interview again, that she also had the same treatment. Because I mentioned that I had read this book, was reading the book when I interviewed him. And he said that his grandmother had the same treatment and it cured her of her cervical cancer. And she was fine after. And she
Okay.
had the same thing. They stuck her up there and sewed it all in.
Fuck.
Crazy.
It's crazy too because like all of the racism like tainted doctors' abilities to even like take their patients' complaints seriously, right? Or
Yeah.
believe what they were saying to actually be like, I don't like that either. I mean, like I know there was a whole bunch of things influencing the situation in history or whatever, but like when you think about how the doctor is supposed to be the one that knows that you go to for help, or at least that's what I think in my white privileged experience, right? To think that they're just looking at you and being like, you know what I mean? Like not taking it with any real seriousness. And then you die because of that. It's just too much, like it's just brutal.
She
And,
complained that they kept on just dismissing her and said, oh, come back next month. Come back next month. Like, crazy.
And like they knew, they're like, we don't go there because then we die or whatever, right? Like it like becomes the lore of the land. Like don't go see the doctor if you're Black because everybody gets worse or
But then
whatever,
they kill you.
like
Yeah.
They might actually make you sick. Like, I'm going to do this experiment. Like, there was experiments.
or give
that they
you
did,
something secretly, right? Like you come in for a checkup and you leave with syphilis because they want to see how it's going to play out in your body.
Oh,
Right?
Or even
Yeah, or they
cancer,
injected
like
those people with
injecting
those
people with
cells.
cancer
Yeah.
to see if it turned into cancer. Yeah, does it spread?
I wanted to leave on a high note, but I gotta go.
Okay, say something good.
Not
on
because
your
of
high
the
note.
conversation.
Do you have a date with your cousin?
Kinda.
You got a date with
No,
her sister.
I actually have Kara birthday stuff. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Do you
It was so
recommend
nice
the
to
book
see you.
and the movie?
Oh
let's
yeah,
hear that.
I recognize the book and the movie
You
all
recognize
day
it.
long. I recognize it and I recommend it. I see it. I read
Any
it.
preference
watch it.
between book and
Read it.
movie?
Oh, the books always win. Books should always win. Book wins. It'll be interesting to see at the end of this season what the consensus is, at least for the books chosen. But you know, often they don't nail it in the movie, and this is one of the rare occasions where, though you know they do edit it and they do take out a lot of the Henrietta's life part and the science. I think they did a great job. I think they did good casting, and I think for Deborah, which was kind of the key role, Oprah slayed it. Yeah, she
All
did
right, great.
I don't know why this action is slayed it. It's just like me doing a crazy hand is slayed it.
That's your zombie hand.
That's my
Saying it
zombie
with the
hand.
zombie.
So you gotta go get some brains.
Yeah. Okay, it was so good to see you guys.
It was nice to see you.
I'll
say
go
hi
pop
to
in on another
Kara.
one.
For
I
us.
will.
Yeah.
Well,
Anyway,
thanks, guys.
wow.
That was fun.
On that note,
Now,
you
now,
guys
now go call your cousin.
clear things up.
Yeah.
Listen.
This
Here's
was
the
not
episode.
about you.
Well, listen to the episode about the stem cells or about the HeLa cells. Seriously.
All right, well, good pick. Thanks, Bear.
If you've enjoyed these video highlights, listen to the full episode on our YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts. Remember to like and subscribe and ring that bell to be notified when new episodes are published. Find out more by going to www.bookinterrupted.com.
Never forget, every child matters.